Rick, I think they can hear us.
Good stuff. Hello, everyone. We'll start in a moment. Let us know if you can hear us or if you cannot. Oh, I don't see any. Oh, there we go. Now I see some people.
How's the audio? Are we balanced?
Let us know if you can hear us okay, and we'll start in just a moment.
Someone hears voices.
It's the Wolfie.
I hear those too sometimes, but I don't tell anybody. How's everybody doing today? Y'all good? We got some really cool music. It's chill. Rick is a little low.
Am I? How about this? Maybe because I wasn't speaking. Let me know. Fabulous.
Yeah. I can never get my mic settings right, so it's probably me being a little loud, if that's the problem. But you guys can hear us over the music, right? Need a vacation.
All right, cool. So, shall we start, Tim? Shall we remove?
I think so.
You remove, I'll start. We'll get into action. There we go. There's us.
How's everybody doing today?
Welcome to the Devology Livecast. I'm Rick. This is Tim. Today we're going to be talking about what makes a game remarkable, and as always, answering questions from our live chat from folks who are hanging out with us here today. Any questions about game development or about what we're up to it here at GameDev.tv. So, Tim, let's start the conversation. First question to you: do you have in your mind one particular game that is remarkable that you talk to everyone about? So maybe, okay, before that, what do you reckon? Should we give a definition of remarkable and what that means and why we should even care about things being remarkable?
I think so. Let's start there, and then let's go with our games that we're going to share with people. So what do you think, Rick? I'll let you start.
Yes. Wait, sorry, what?
wait who are you reading?
Got me all confused. So okay. You're reading the chat, aren't you?
Okay. I think a remarkable game is a game that stands out in a specific area or more than one area. So a remarkable, this music is it's a little loud.
Yeah, the music, I think it's the I'm like, what?
I think it's so loud. I'm like, where are we at right now? I gotta chill out a little bit.
Let's chill music and more us.
Yeah, it's just throwing me off. Okay. So I think a remarkable game is a game that stands out remarkably in any specific area. I think games can stand out in a lot of areas: aesthetics, sound, music, atmosphere, programming, animations, right? Like gameplay, feedback, control, lot of stuff. So I think a remarkable game is one that really stands out from other games or other games in the genre in a really intense way. Aesthetically, an example would be, like, we always use this example, but Darkest Dungeon, right? The aesthetic of Darkest Dungeon is completely different than anything else. The sound design in that game with the narrator and all that stuff is completely different than other games that are similar. So, like, I think remarkability comes from that uniqueness, and it's not even uniqueness in and of itself, because nothing is really unique, right? But it's uniqueness in its genre or what it's trying to get across, or in gaming, right? Because a lot of times people draw inspiration from books or movies, but it's new to gaming, so that can make it remarkable.
And it's really important, as we're making a game as a product, we're trying to create something that people will like and enjoy, and that could potentially make some money or have a lot of people play it. And we saw recently in our game jam that we've just wrapped up that certain games you want to tell other people about, and certain games you look at and you're like, I want to play that one. And there's the challenge when you're out there trying to market your game in the future, that you want a game that people want to play, and then you want a game that people want to keep playing, and then you want a game that people want to tell other people about. And wrapped up in that whole equation is that remarkability of giving people a reason to talk about it. And I think a lot of what we do naturally as as game developers, as indie game developers, is we're looking to solve problems, but we're so often so focused on the technical problem. How do I just get my guy moving? How do I get multiplayer working? How do I get it so when you finish level 2, it loads to level 3 with all the player stats increasing? So we're so focused on solving those challenges that we're not necessarily solving the challenge of how do I make my game stand out? And because it's really hard. Like if you say, what's the formula? Show me the doc that has how my game stands out. There isn't really a doc to do that, but there are some consistent elements that you can look at. And I think one of the best ways to do it is to do something unexpected. And this is the rule in a lot of things, in movies, in shows, in stand-up comedy, in in character evolutions in a book, for example, character arcs. Do something unexpected. So for me, the example I always go back to is Bennett Foddy's Getting Over It. And I think the reason that that game is unexpected is, first of all, you're a guy in a cauldron with a sledgehammer trying to move yourself around. Actually, let me just find a quick image of that while we're hanging out here. And it's weird. It's unusual. It makes you want to look at it, talk about it, just say, why is he doing that?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to share my screen here.
It's different and it's really weird to look at, right? Like, I think that makes people talk about it. And Remarkable doesn't, it could be so many different things, but it absolutely can be weird and awkward.
It's just a Markiplier video was the first one I found on YouTube. So let's see if there's any others that.
Look at the fidelity of his face compared to that game.
Yeah, there we go. So anyway, you get the point of it. It's a dude sliding around, grabbing a mallet and sitting in a cauldron. It's weird, but that's awesome in an awesome, weird kind of way. And so there's a visual element. I think the main character is often the easiest way to get that kind of remarkability to punch out. So I think Goat Simulator as well had that really captured people's interest with running around as a goat. It's an open world game. And instead of running around as a, whatever is a sensible character, you're literally a goat bouncing into things. And the remarkability there is the goat gets in all sort of contorted positions, and there's an imperfection to that game. You clip through the walls, things don't line up properly. So I think all these things, you look at it and you say, first of all, that's interesting and unexpected and weird, and I want to try it myself. So maybe go buy it or watch some videos on it. And then because you've had an experience that you think is newsworthy to your friends, you tell your friends about it. Or if you're a YouTuber, you go and make a YouTube video about it because your audience will be interested in watching it because they'll watch your content and say, that's kind of cool and interesting and weird and fun or great or amazing. So that's where remarkability is so core to the process. So Tim, throwing back to you with a question, when you've worked on games, when do you think in the process, in the game development flow, when do you think about remarkability? When do you try to build it into your game dev process?
I think that process has changed over time as I've kind of had experience in game dev. I think in the beginning, as I was developing games and building stuff, I think it came in later in the process when I was like, oh, people aren't paying attention to my game. How do I change it and make it like more appealing and more interesting and more remarkable? And I think there's a series of things I did, like in Philophobia, for example. The game wasn't always completely made out of hearts. The game didn't always have these crazy bosses. It didn't have a lot of that stuff. A lot of that stuff came about, one, because I wanted to make a better game, but also because I wanted to show off cool stuff in the game and make it really feel, crazy. When the best way to do it is to look at a video of your game, and you can tell like the video looks so much different than like playing the actual game. And if the game doesn't look interesting in video, you need some more juice. But I think later on in my dev kind of career, I've started to think about it earlier and earlier, and now it's actually part of what I would consider pre-production for a game. Like how it's going to be completely different and completely fascinating and just draw people in, to the point where I've even started. I have when I actually design ideas, I don't actually just design the ideas. I actually try and think about the aesthetics as well. Like I've actually designed entire aesthetics for games on my iPad, for games I haven't made yet. Because I think looking at a doctored screenshot, if that makes sense, of like a a fake screenshot
Like a
can really
stethoscope and a white medical outfit and stuff?
yes, exactly like that. If you're making a doctor game, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But specifically, like if you build out a screenshot in some kind of art program like Photoshop or Inkscape, you can look at it and you could see like, hey, this is what the game might look like, and then you can already start working on that remarkability from an aesthetic point of view, anyway. There, and there are plenty of other ways to make games remarkable and stand out, and there's a lot of games that do that. But I think video games are primarily a visual medium, and the way that people judge them is primarily visual, even without sound, right? Like Steam trailers play without sound, most videos on Facebook and Twitter play without sound, GIFs are the things that spread on Reddit. Like a lot of times people are going to see your game without sound or context, so the aesthetics part of it is really important.
Yeah, one game that I've been playing a bunch of recently, once again, I'll just go to YouTube and just search for, I don't know how banned this will get us, me searching on YouTube and
Uh-oh.
quickly playing other people's stuff. No, not that sort of RO, just as a as a way of looking at things. So, Risk of Rain 2, I've been playing a lot of recently. And what's going on here? And my first impression when I looked at it visually, I wasn't. Oh, why you? I chose the wrong video. Then it goes to some other Enter the Gungeon type thing. So here's Risk of Rain 2. You're running around. When I first looked at it, I wasn't really overly like, wow, those graphics are amazing.
Yeah.
I sort of thought they look odd, and I'm not sure if I'm into them. But in a strange way, that had me more interested in the game and spend more time figuring out whether it would be the sort of game I'd want to play because
Right.
it wasn't what I was expecting. And because I wasn't sure if now that I've played it a bunch, I like the graphics. It really works. It's a very interesting game. It's a great game, really, really good game to play. But the graphics really do work. And they're different. They're sort of, are they cartoony? Are they kiddie? My first reaction was they look a little bit kiddie and cartoony, but the game itself is so far from kiddie and cartoony. It's not
Yeah.
that at all. And it's an indie game made by a small team, and they've done, they've just made the visual style a bit unusual, and it's really worked. So the main reason for showing that is it doesn't need to be the best, amazing, greatest. People looking to say, "Wow, photorealistics," award-winning art. It just needs to be something that you look
Yeah.
at and say, "What's that all about? I want to know more about that."
Duskers is a fantastic example that came on the chat. I'll pull that up in a second, but I wanted to show off Inscription right now because I think this is a game that really caught me off guard. This game, so when I saw it the first time, I was like, this kind of looks like I don't know. It looked like one of those like Halloween games that comes out around Halloween. That's like, was it done in a game jam? It just didn't look that interesting. But Richard, my friend Richard, actually bought me a copy, and he just sent it as a gift, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm playing it now. And I played it, and this game blew my mind. So aesthetically, I don't know. It's a style choice, right? Like you either like it or you don't. I've actually come to love it. I didn't like it at first. At first, I thought it was really off-putting. It looked like almost low budget in my mind. But this game is a card game mixed with an escape room, and the way that they pulled this off, like you have to play this card game with this weird deity dude, and you have to like find things and pay attention to things and play the card game over and over to get him to talk about stuff, to like have secrets in the room, to like get out of the room. And the game just takes a crazy twist that I'm not going to spoil, but it gets ridiculous and it's insane and it keeps going. Like right when I think it's about to end, it's like another twist of like crazy stuff that's happening. And it absolutely blew my mind. And this game is remarkable in every sense of the word. It even won, I think it won the Indie Game Award or something like that, right?
Nice.
Like the actual the big one. But yeah, so that game, it blew my mind. Duskers is another example.
I got Duskers up here. Let me show that.
Oh, show that off. I love this game. This game is so atmospheric. So you really need audio to really understand what this game is about. But it's basically you're a drone pilot, and you are piloting drones on derelict spaceships to go and retrieve stuff. But sometimes the spaceships are inhabited, and you're basically trying to find power-ups for your drones or additional drones or whatever, and you got to turn power off in certain
So
spots.
what's the remarkability about it? What is it that you you want to turn to your friends and say, "Oh, this game is XYZ."
I think there's a couple things. One, I think the aesthetics and the atmosphere really make you feel like a drone operator in deep space. Like if you
Right.
put headphones on and you're playing this thing, you forget you're at a computer and you feel like you're operating drones remotely on derelict
Yep.
spaceships. Like there's very few games that escape me out of my brain into that world, and this game did that for
Mm.
me.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
the other part is this is remarkability from like a dev perspective, not so much from like a user perspective, but I actually love how such simple aesthetics could create such a strong effect and atmosphere. I always find that super fascinating when I see a game that can pull that off. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And
this game was amazing.
you know what's remarkable? Little things are remarkable. Things where you're like, "Huh, I'm going to tell someone about that." I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but for me, I've only just in the last day or two noticed that on the play bar on YouTube, there's the little wavy hill things that seem to indicate the most replayed areas of a video. I don't know why we need to know that, but it's remarkable. I would probably tell a few people about that. Hey, have you seen this thing? What do you think about it? Why are they doing it? So sometimes, sometimes that remarkability comes from change, or once again, it's unexpected. That hasn't been there for years of looking at YouTube videos, but now you can see down the bottom there's these little hills. What does it mean? So remarkability pops up in many strange places.
It absolutely does, and I sometimes it's the weirdest of places. Like I said, I saw Inscription half a dozen times, and I was like, no, that looks like a bootleg Halloween game. And then it just I wouldn't have bought it. I wouldn't have. And then my
Yeah.
friend actually bought it for me, and then I gave it a play. And but I think that's what remarkable games do, right? Is like he played it and he was like, Tim has to play this. Like he has to, right? And I've done the same thing. I'm like, I played a game and I'm like, you know what? Like I did that with XCOM with my brother when I played XCOM. I immediately told him, I was like, dude, you have to play this. You have to. And
Mm.
I think I might have bought him a copy. I don't remember, but I was like very adamant about it. And he was like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'm like, no, you need to get it now. And when you have a game that's just so perfectly either a fit for you or like just so refreshingly unique or remarkable, I think you want to share it, right? Because that's what humans do. We're social creatures. We want to share things that affect us, and that's what good art does.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as well the process of finding remarkability is pretty straightforward and pretty obvious in my book, which is create a thing and show it to people and see what their reaction is. Now you need to be a little bit um it's a little bit subjective in terms of if you ask them, is this remarkable? They're probably not going to give you a rating from 1 to 10, although they may. That could be a good way of doing it. But it's people's reaction. So if you show them your character and they're like, oh, pretty cool, then that doesn't feel remarkable. If you show them the character and they're like, what? Or, whoa, well, that's cool. If you add a new sort of jump to your character where, it's just a regular kind of jump, you say, okay, well, let's have a different test where pick up a power up and when you jump, opens his legs, a huge like afterburner comes out its butt, and then you just go around the level. If they look and they go, wow, what is that? Then, there's some remarkability in that. There's some excitement. There's some unexpectedness in that moment. And a lot of my examples border on the silly when I give my examples, but you don't necessarily need to go in that direction. It can be dark, it can be beautiful, it can be huge, it can be tiny. There's so many ways to craft that remarkability. Is take the normal. So what does a normal character do in a platformer? What does a normal character do in a racing game? What's a normal character do in a shooter? Take that normal and say, how can I alter that in a particular direction? So Risk of Rain 2 that I was showing before, one of the massive points of remarkability is the game is items. Like the game is pickups. Start off with your general sort of character, and then as you pick up one of hundreds of items, they change your character, and they really do change your character. So you can pick up one of the speed things, and your character runs 25% quicker. You can pick up 30 of those things, like if, through certain magic and playing the game for ages and certain things, your game literally becomes like a god in terms of the speed that it can run around. And that for me is the first time you have that happen to you where you get a whole stack of these items. It's incredible because most games don't allow you to stack that far. they cap. You can double your damage, but you can't increase your damage by 30, 30 times. So there's
Yeah.
remarkability, and that's its hook. It's like, items. That's the thing we're going to be. So focus on one or two things and really dial those up. Really go to town on those particular aspects.
That's a really good point for remarkability, though, that a lot of people don't touch on is the mechanical remarkability. And I think a lot of times that's one of the harder ones to implement, right? Because it's like it's very dependent on the game or the genre, and it's also that you have to maintain some sort of balance. But I think some of the coolest, especially in procedurally generated like roguelite games, are games that let you kind of build a crazy build that you don't think the game should allow, right? Like just a broken build. And there's a couple games that I think do that really well. Like Binding of Isaac is one of them. Dicey Dungeon actually does that as well. And Dicey Dungeon is a little more casual of a game, but that game, the way that some of those abilities can stack, you can get free dice and unlimited dice, and you can break the game in all these kind of crazy ways. And I think one of the mistakes a lot of newer developers make is they say, oh, I can't let the player do that. Oh, this shouldn't stack, or I want to maintain some sort of balance for the game. But I think letting the player kind of go crazy and break the balance can be really cool, especially in a procedurally generated game, right? Like, especially in a game that has like permadeath where you're gonna die and then restart a run without any of those items, right? You can't you can't do that in a game where they're going to consistently play and break the game. But in a game where like there's random item pickups, like Risk of Rain, for example, you can, because you don't get that every run, right? And the runs you do stand out from the runs where you don't. So it's just something to keep in mind, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's cool to involve our chat here. If there's anything you want to highlight, any games you've seen that you think have that remarkability gem, so we can not just look at, oh, that game was remarkable, but let's look at why. Let's look at how we can, pardon me, how we can distill that back to our own knowledge and use that. So we've talked a little bit about character, having a character that you're not expecting. That's a way of doing it. Having one feature that you have really put a lot of time and effort and love into that feature. So it becomes a really powerful way for people to communicate about your game. Here's a game where the way you shoot is really interesting. It's also obviously the visuals. Visuals are so important. Having an art style that isn't just the same old art style as everyone else, and that could be the way you use the lighting to create a really moody, atmospheric situation. It could be having shaders, could be just the art style, the way the characters are proportioned, etc. So looking for a way to break the norm, not just do what all the other games do. So if you guys have seen games and you want to let us know why it's remarkable, not just the game, but why it's right. Actually, Tim, if people let us know the game, we could have a look at it and then do a little bit of decoding of it.
Yeah, I think Slay the Spire is a really good example. They took card and deck building games and they brought it to the computer, and they also really took deck building to the next level, and they merged deck building with kind of like a 2D tactics game, I guess. So you're like actually using cards against real enemies, not against other cards, which is fascinating. So you've got a character you're powering up and you're kind of attacking other enemies. This game was really unique when it came out, and it did a lot of things. The map was one of them too. I actually used the map in my game, Battleborn Tactics. I used that same kind of design of the map, and that influenced a lot of roguelikes as well. So there was a lot of different aspects of this, and we're seeing the rise right now of card-based roguelikes, like 100%. Like this game influenced that entire genre. Yeah, so that map design right there
that's
was
really
been
cool as
hugely.
well. Oh, sorry, that map design. I'll go back to that.
Sorry, I was just saying that's been hugely influenceable. Like it's influenced
Right.
a lot of games.
I kept it. There we go. There's a map. Okay, that was a quickie. You know what's really cool as well is I don't like card games at all. Like this sort of game, I look at it, I'm like, nah, I'm not really into that. Once I get into this game, I'm sure I would enjoy it. And I've played lots of card games, and I kind of get into it eventually. But it's interesting that you need to make sure that when you're testing for remarkability, you're testing on the right people. You're asking the right people the right question. If you ask me, hey, what do you think about this? What aspects stand out? I'd be like, Card games. I don't know if I've got the energy to get into it. Um, so you need to be careful not to listen to people like me if I'm not into this sort of game. Whereas Tim, he's really into this sort of game. He's like, "Oh, look at the map! Wow, the way you're doing the map is amazing." Or it actually the cards affect the enemy, etc. So, um, and it's okay. I don't think you can meet everyone's needs. You certainly can't satisfy all the folks out there.
You know, Rick, the other day actually, I was up late at night working on my demo for the Steam Fest, and I was like, you know what? I want to watch Twitch streams while I'm working on my game. And I pulled up Twitch, and I was looking. I didn't know. I was like, oh, there's so many games. I don't know what any of these games are. I'm just gonna look at Slay the Spire streams. So I pulled up Slay the Spire streams, and the top guy that I clicked on had an Excel spreadsheet open,
Mm.
and they were they were every card that they got, they were adding to a spreadsheet. And he had built a spreadsheet of every card in the game, and he was calculating probabilities for the individual moves. And he was letting the spreadsheet tell him which card to play in which order. And I was just like, that seems like the most boring, horrific way to ever play that game. Like, how do you do that? So there are definitely people that enjoy different parts of the game, right? Like when I think about a card game, I am not thinking about the mathematical probabilities. In fact, one of the things I enjoy about a card game itself is the fact that the information horizon is kind of cut off because I have 5 random cards. I can only
Yeah.
make the decisions with those 5 random cards. I don't have access to my whole deck. Whereas like chess, for example, there's no information horizon. That game is wide open, right? Like you can see every move directly on the board, and so it makes me just sit there and stare blankly for like 20 minutes before I take a turn. So I like having information cut off, and that's why I like really random games. That makes sense. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. What else did you find in chat? Any other folks? Let's see.
Outer Wilds is a really good example. Gary brought it up. The remarkability comes from the spectacle of watching the solar system evolve over the 22 minutes in the soundtrack. Sound design really takes it to the next level. So Outer Wilds is a really good example. So Outer Wilds is a game that takes exactly 22 minutes every time you play it. And there's all kinds of planets and like crazy stuff to explore, but you can't explore all of it. So you play it through it and you can explore some things, and then it's a time loop, and you basically
Is this it?
that's not it. That's
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 not it
not it
either.
either.
All right,
No.
wrong video. Sometimes I'm just clicking on the first one. Review. We don't review. We want gameplay, don't we? Outer Wilds gameplay. Side note: this is how I do most of my research for games. I go onto YouTube and I watch gameplay videos for, however long, and then just buy. Is this it?
You know, there's another game called Outer Worlds that I always confuse the two with, but I don't think.
Are we supposed to look at Outer Wilds or Outer Worlds?
I think it's Outer. This is it. I think. Yeah. Or whatever. So basically, you're exploring these different planets, right? And you can't make it everywhere in 22 minutes. So you basically at the end there's a time loop, and you go back and then you try it again. But you can explore different things this time. But there are connections. There are things you learn. You learn about how different planets kind of align with the gravity.
So
You learn about what
what's the
items you need.
remarkability? Just that you feel like you're in space and it's a sort of gameplay it's got unusual gameplay. And it's space.
I think there's a lot of things here. This is one of those games that's really unique and kind of doesn't fit in a genre outside of like a sci-fi genre.
Yeah.
The fact that you have a few minutes every time to explore different things, and each thing has different crazy stuff to explore, and you also learn different things, and then you take those things back with you back in time to then use that knowledge to explore other parts of the game.
It sounds like they do discoverability or discovering or being an
Yeah, that's a
explorer, do that
huge
really
part of it.
well.
Yes, that's a
And
huge part of it.
this is part of remarkability, I think, also comes from giving people a feeling, giving people a strong feeling. So if someone's playing this game, like I really felt like I was a explorer. I was finding things like, whoa, there's a thing, and there's another thing, and what are these huge
Yeah,
tornado things? And there was something and the whole planet was made out of water and all
yeah,
that kind of stuff. So I think giving people that strong feeling, and you can fly into the thing and then go down into it. So
right.
I think that's a big part of it. If your game is just what's the feeling you get, fun, then it might be a game that someone enjoys, but it's not
Right.
necessarily going to be easy for them to go talk about it. So you've got to give them the words to go talk about it. More
Right.
than just it's a fun game. That doesn't help spread the word about your game.
Yeah, and this takes exploration. It takes all the boring walking 30 miles parts out of it, right? So
Right.
you're exploring the same stuff, but it's different and it's crazy, and you can't explore everything at one time. So
This
it's really
just
tight.
jumping to the next one. Let me see if I can find it. Once again, I should be typing gameplay. This for me is a game that I've talked about a bunch because I hate it, and because
Hate it.
it's so hard. This is probably the easiest, sorry, most easily the hardest game I've ever played. Not hard as in, Flappy Bird, you only last 3 seconds, and then you hit the wall. Like difficult, but I gave it many hours. I'm just looking on Steam to see if I've still got how many hours I played it for. I played it for 5 hours, and I still didn't know what the hell I was doing. I watched countless videos. I still didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to play, how to win. Like you can get in there and you can move some stuff around. I did a thing, but it's so deep, like just so deep. There's so much going on. And do the things going on matter? Do you need to do the things that are going on? I'm here. How do I conquer there? Why is he getting me? So I'm sure there's folks out there who have played it who totally understand it. Like, well, Rick, it's pretty easy once you get into it. But for me, the remarkability here is, first of all, it's beautiful. I love map-based games, world conquering, real world, like using the actual actual Europe as opposed to a fantasy world. I love those sorts of games. There's a remarkability in that. But just the fact that they went super deep, super complex, super intricate, they didn't go halfway. They didn't say, okay, Rick can't figure out how to play this game. We better dial it back, fellas. We
Yeah.
better make it idiot proof. It's like, no, I don't care. The idiots can go play something else. Go play Flappy Bird, Rick. You'll be able to play that game. So the fact that they were strong in that conviction of we're going to make a game that's really deep and complex and challenging, I think there's remarkability in that.
You know what game did that for me is Stellaris. Let me pull it up.
Dolores, someone's
Yeah,
saying my microphone got quiet. You still hearing me okay,
I
Tim?
still hear you fine. I don't know.
Okay.
If there's any more details on that. So this is the same type of game that you were talking about, Rick. This is a huge, expansive 4X like crazy game. The kind of game that you need to watch a 2-hour YouTube tutorial just to start, because it gets crazy.
Right.
You collect empires and conquer stars and fight people and build armies, and it's absolutely crazy. And it took so much work to just learn the game, man. Like it takes a ridiculous amount of work.
Yeah.
Because you got to know what all this stuff is, and there's stuff everywhere. But I had a lot of fun playing it, and I had an experience that I don't think I could have gotten anywhere else, because this game is just so expansive, and because it didn't say, "Hey, we're gonna teach you all this up front." We're just gonna assume that you're familiar with the genre and you know how to play it, or that YouTubers are gonna make their own kind of
Mm.
tutorials for it. So I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. There's another, I think, like looking at a game like Hyperlight Drifter. It's been around for a little bit now, but there's a lot of pixel art games out there, that do okay. And if
Yeah.
you're saying, okay, I'll make a pixel art game, how do I make my pixel art game better? And it's a game where, what's the style? Top down, you're running around, it's 2D, it's the innovation is not in what type of game we're going to make. This was just beautiful. Like the reason that this is remarkable is look at the depth, look at the colors. The colors are interesting. There's
Yeah.
all these effects, that just the richness of it. Clearly, whoever created this game is a master artist, and so that's the remarkability there. And if you're not a master artist or you don't have one of those on your team, then don't go chasing that point of remarkability.
Right.
Don't get there and say, okay, I'm going to make my pixel art game look really amazing. I'm not really sure how to do pixel art, because this is someone who's been creating art for years and years and years,
Yeah.
not just a few months. Like this is really good stuff. And so you can do that, you can find that, but pick your lane, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Let's
The
talk a little bit
gameplay, I
about
thought,
that, because that's
the
important.
gameplay. Oh, yep. Sorry.
Go ahead, Rick. What were you
I was
saying?
going to say the gameplay is pretty good. Like it's good enough to keep you there. But the thing that got me in the door to buy this game was just looking at it and saying, whoa, looks amazing.
Yeah. And I think like what happened with Hyperlife Drifter is someone who's really good at visual aesthetic artistry took a game and made it 100% their game, and they went all the way down the lane that they were in, right? Which was the visual aspect of it. But not everybody's the best artist. Not everybody has the best, art skills. And so making a game that's remarkable requires you to go really deep in your lane. Sometimes it's aesthetics, but sometimes it's atmosphere, sometimes it's story, sometimes it's systems or mechanics. There's a lot of stuff like that. I think if shameless plug here, if I could use my game as an example. Uh, so I'm making a game called Battleborn Tactics, which the demo is actually live right now for Next Fest. If you guys want to play this, again, shameless plug. I'm going to post a link there just in case you guys want to play it. But one of the things that I find myself pretty good at, and this is because I made a card game called Murder Bunny, so I'm really good at, like, I play a lot of card games. I know a lot about systems and effects. So what I did is I built an entire world of characters that have their own unique abilities. And then I actually built a game where you can play those same characters and you can capture the enemy characters to play them on your team with all a bunch of unique abilities. And that was kind of the thing that I really liked, is I had a systems type of mindset, and I kind of built an entire game around that. And actually, if you look at this art is not complex. And actually, there's only 2 frames for every character in the entire game. There's no like attack animation. There's no nothing. It's straight up just like one dude sitting there, and he maybe bobs up and down. So the way that I did things is I'm not the most remarkable artist. I'm not the most remarkable sound designer, but I tried to really stick to what I know and what I was good at. And I tried to go heavily in the systems route and the effects and the abilities and how those abilities stack and kind of work with each other. And not saying it's remarkable. I don't know. I guess you can't really say your own stuff is remarkable, but I'm really proud of that whole system and how it interacts with everything.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, it's, I find often when I've been helping people find remarkability, the remarkability is there if someone's played your game for an hour. Once they play it for an hour, they're, oh yeah, there's plenty of things. That's cool, that's cool, that's interesting. I think the biggest challenge for an indie game developer is how to get that 10-second remarkability so that someone goes and gives it a try, or that when you're watching a YouTuber playing it, you say, okay, I'm interested in this. And that's the part that often is just related on visuals or on some sort of, I don't want to say gimmick, but I think the getting over it example I gave, the guy in the cauldron, it's a bit of a gimmick, right? But that gimmick works. It gets you in there. And then what keeps you there is just the crazy difficulty. I was saying before about Crusader Kings 2 being difficult in terms of I got no idea what to do. In terms of difficulty of actually winning the game, all of those rage games are just like, well, I think they make us ragey, but there's a remarkability in the raginess that keeps you there, tells your friends about it. But that's the initial, what gave you the, I want to check this out. I think that's really important as well. And that comes down to a little bit of how you make your trailer, how you make your GIFs, how you present. Are you looking, as you're making your game, are you looking for the snapshot? So you need to look for the snapshot, not the game mechanic that requires, time to get in there and feel it, but the snapshot. And that's tough. You got to keep working on that and practicing it.
Yeah. And a lot of times it doesn't, like, one, it doesn't always come to you directly, but 2, it can actually change over time. So one of the things that I've realized with making games is the thing that people really love about your game and that they share about your game is not always the same thing that you thought they were going to talk about. Like, I've made dozens of game jam games at this point, and I've usually made them on stream, right? So I'm making them, and then people are coming on the stream and they're asking me, "What kind of game are you making?" And I have to constantly pitch, like, "Hey, I'm making this kind of game. It's this game mixed with this genre or whatever." And I've noticed that the way that I talk about the game, and then I'll publish it, and then people will share the game, and what they will say will be completely different. They'll say this game is like whatever, like, and I'm just like what? I got to look that game up. Like, what's going on? But like the context with which they share the game is usually more honest approach, I think, because it kind of represents what the world at large would say about your creation versus what you think it is. Because you're the creator, you can see all the lines, you're the puppet master, you see things from a very different perspective. So the remarkability part is actually what other people say about it usually, versus what you say. Because like I said, I just shared how proud I was of my systems, but I guarantee you people are like, what system? I don't care about systems. I think the characters are cute or whatever, like they may not care about that at all. But for me, like I put a lot of effort into the system. So that's what I find remarkable about it.
Yeah, awesome. So, Tim, I want to experiment with us having a nice to the point stream today rather than our big rambly one that usually we want to, you and I just want to hang out forever because we like
I
hanging out
know
with each
it
other and hanging
works.
out with these lovely folks who are asking us questions. So, what if we transition into questions now? If you guys have any questions about remarkability, about how to improve your game, how to find it, search for it, then let us know. Hit us up. We'll do 5 minutes of questions and then we'll see if we can wrap this up like a grown-ups live stream as opposed to what we often do, which is let's just hang out.
Listen to us ramble forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nakamura actually said, if you make Among Us today, it's not remarkable, but if you made it when Among Us didn't exist yet, it would have been. Context is everything. I think that's a good point too. So timing and context are super important. Part of what makes something remarkable is the fact that you have built something that kind of didn't exist before. So like the second somebody does something really amazing and there's a runaway hit, like Slay the Spire, for example, even if you come by after that and you make a similar game, it's not as remarkable just by the nature of people. Everybody was familiar with Slay the Spire and all that stuff. So you got to keep that in mind. But at the same time, I think part of remarkability is changing things. So if Slay the Spire comes along and you're really inspired by that game, I don't think you should make a clone of Slay the Spire, right? I think you should take Slay the Spire, be inspired to make your own version of it and change some things in a way that you think is remarkable. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really, really difficult to come up with something that's never been done before. This mechanic's brand new or this way of doing it. The way that you join your elements together is the innovation. So don't go look for, I'm going to make my character move in a way that no one's ever done before. But the combination of how you move, with how you present the visual style, with how you present your challenges, all of that's going to make a unique experience. And I think if there's something that's really popular at the moment, that's probably not the thing to chase because by the time you've made your game, 20 other games have come out to do the popular thing. So you want to, if something's been around for a while, it's okay, I think, to draw heavily from that. But if something is the flavor of the day, I think that's a risky strategy to try to follow that too closely because you get caught up in a whole bunch of Me
Yeah.
Too's.
Somebody brought up Vampire Survivors. There's a bunch of people trying to make clones of that game right now too, and some people are succeeding. But I think generally trying to clone something that's successful is not a good strategy. If it spawns a genre, you can make your own version of that genre, sure. But chasing is never the position you want to be in, right? You want to be innovating because I think that's how you really have those runaway breakaway hits usually.
Question from Marcus: how do you do a Kickstarter which random people really notice? I mean, this is the whole magic of remarkability. You show a couple of people and see what clicks, see what they really talk about, and then you iterate, you iterate, you iterate. So how do you do it? You keep changing, keep adding, and keep modifying. If you've got an idea in your head, this is the way it's going to go down. This is the way my game's going to go down, and it's not remarkable, then your game's not going to succeed commercially. So you have to be fluid. You have to be open. You have to be flexible, not to zigzag. I'll make a racing car game. Oh, it's actually now a shooter. Oh, it's actually a racing car shooter game. Oh, it's actually soccer. It's whatever. You need to pick a genre and stick in that genre. I believe that's the important part. But how you morph within that, I think, depends upon what you're hearing from people. So don't try to do that discovery in the Kickstarter. Do this discovery first in a community. Get people to play your demo. You need a demo before you go to Kickstarter. Get people to give feedback on your idea and work on it. When you get to the point where people are saying, that's cool, then you can go to somewhere like Kickstarter where people haven't seen it before and people already think it's cool and they're already going to give it a thumbs up, so to speak.
Yeah. But even when you have something cool, you have to be prepared for people to just absolutely destroy it on video because that's what happened with Murder Bunnies. We had so many people supporting and so many awesome, cool things that people were saying, but then there's plenty of people that were not so nice about it too. So you got to be prepared for that stuff too. And you can't let that stuff get in your head. If someone says something negative about it, you can't immediately think that, oh, your game's stupid and doesn't have anything special about it. You have to kind of take that within a box and then say, okay, but these people love this special thing about it, and just keep hitting the horn on what they find special.
couple of quick ones before we wrap up. Thoughts on being inspired by a 15-year-old game that used to be popular? I love the example of Crossy Road, which was inspired by Frogger. I think that was probably more than 15 years. It was probably 30 years between Frogger and Crossy Road. Clearly inspired by it. And that game made those folks a lot of money and a lot of people really happy having a good time playing it. So absolutely being inspired by older games. Like the classic games, there's a, they pretty much covered most of the genres 15 years ago. We're not really inventing new genres day in, day out. So yeah, I love it. Get inspiration.
Totally. And honestly, the strongest inspiration comes from stuff that you have nostalgia or like positive memories from your childhood for, right? Those are really long, deep memories. And so 100%, those are the best places to get inspiration from, because you're not pulling from whatever the latest trend is.
Yeah. Yeah. And a good point is just to have fun when you're making your game. So if you're finding it's a bit bland, or you're not excited by it, or you're not putting things in there that you find are like, "Oh, this is crazy," then your players are going to feel the same thing. Cool. One last question, Tim, I reckon, then we can wrap it up. Wrap it up. What have we got? See any questions in there?
Someone said time for a Pong remake. I think they were joking, but I want to show you what somebody I know is making. This is called Pong Slot. Okay, and this is amazing. I love this. So let's talk about a remake of Pong, man. He's taking it to the next level. This is like, it's got crazy Aztec gods trying to kill you, and it's like a shooter, and it's all kinds of crazy stuff.
That is crazy. Yeah, there's a remarkability in crazy. It's over the top. It's not a little bit of special effects. It's all the special effects.
It's all, this is got the skulls. Like, talk about Pong, man.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, you can do that with anything, right? You can go to the next level. I think it's pretty awesome.
Excellent. Well, you know what? We are going to wrap up there. We'll keep it under the hour for a change. So thanks everyone for joining us today live. Hopefully anyone watching not live, you guys have got some thoughts out of this. Please let us know in the comments if you've got any games you think are remarkable, so that we can all continue to ponder them and learn from it. Tim, lovely hanging out with you as always, my friend. Thank you for your wisdom and your insight. And we'll be seeing everyone again next week. Although I think it's just you next week, Tim.
It's just me.
Next week.
Yeah,
just
Rick is,
and maybe someone else.
Yeah, well,
so thanks everyone. Everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
It's been awesome. It's been amazing. It always is. Keep in mind, hang out in the Discord, chat, tell us how we did, tell us what you want to see for upcoming episodes. We're around if you need us. Have fun. Night, everybody.